Has a nice ring to it, eh? I have been saying, and I said on Thursday, just a couple of nights ago, during this Holy Week, during every year, during the Holy Week season, we have this series of services that we hold, and each one of them is unique in the year. You do it once a year. From Palm Sunday to Maundy, Thursday, to Good Friday, to tonight. And in each one of those services, however many times you've attended them, no matter how many recently you've attended them, you know how unique they are and how much more of a participation that you have in them than normal, right? It is this participation in what's going on where we don't hear and understand or get instructed on it as much as we experience it ourselves. We experience this ourselves. It is a reminder. And I want to, at one level, just think back to Thursday night and tonight. On Thursday night, we started with Jesus washing the disciples' feet and our clergy washing everyone else's feet. And we go into the Eucharist service, which this is on the night before he was turned over for arrest, for crucifixion, as we say in the Eucharist prayer. That's the night. That's the service where we remember that night in particular. And after we have his body and his blood, then it's as if Jesus were taken away. The church is stripped of all of the symbolism of Jesus and his resurrection. It's empty and it's dark, and we're alone. In this big crowd, we are alone. And that's what they experienced, this chaos. And the next day, Good Friday, if you participated in the Good Friday services, they're solemn, they're no choir, they are, it's hard to describe. I mean, you know it if you've been there, you've experienced it. It's no party, right? It's kind of plain. It's plain, and it's empty, and something is missing. This service tonight, this vigil service, this Easter vigil, is meant to be at the beginning as we come together in prayer and waiting, anticipating. And then we get to the gospel. We recount all of the works of God throughout history. Well, actually, we take certain things out of the history. It's like, we could make it a vigil. We could go hours, but we don't. Tonight we read about the Israelites passing through the Red Sea. And I want to get to that and talk about it, right? We're hearing about God. We get all the way to the gospel. We get to the gospel, and there is this shock. There is a thing that makes no sense. They go to the tomb, and Jesus is not there. And an angel says, of course not. He's risen from the dead. We're fortunate. All through this entire experience, we know it's coming. That's why we want to get here early on the vigil. We know we want to get to tomorrow morning tonight. We don't have that kind of patience, which is fine, right? We know the joy that is ahead of us, and we want to be there. And we hear this story, and they go, and they're like, okay, I'm going to go tell the disciples. I'm running off. I'll pause here and say it was Mary Magdalene and other Mary. And if you've been around me and my family, you know there's another Mary, and there's another Katie, and there's other Hannah, and there's, I just want to say that if ever your name is other something, you're in the Bible. It happens to the best of us. Even, who was it that wrote tonight's gospel? Was it Matthew? Matthew, yeah. So even that guy, I'm in good company. But this mystery, Christ is raised from the dead. How did that happen? What does that mean? In the moment, it was just as confusing as Thursday night. So those disciples were just as confused Sunday morning as they were Thursday night. And I give as my example of that the disciples on the road to Emmaus, who, when they tell their stories, like, we don't know what just happened. This man, we believed he was the Messiah, and yet he was put to death. I saw him dead. And now, to make things even crazier, some of the women, other Mary, came and told us that he's raised from the dead. What does this mean? Well, we do have the great fortune of being here 2,000 years and plus later, where there's been quite a few great men and women of the church who have helped us to grow ever more rich in our understanding of all that God has done for us, that Jesus was raised from the dead. That is the pivotal moment of history around which every single person's life turns, whether they are in the church or not. That is the moment that determines everything that's going on in and around them. And it's in us. I wanted to spend some time recalling that story of passing through the Red Sea as we consider not just this moment, right? At this moment, there's nothing we need to do more than just be glad. Thank God. Thank God Jesus rose from the dead. We're going to celebrate. This is a happy day. We're going to rejoice. We're going to rejoice in this day. And in the days ahead, we'll figure out what it means. We'll walk through Emmaus, and we'll hear, and we'll learn, and we'll understand, and we'll grow. But I want to just kind of throw the story ahead far enough where we will get to that place where we are going to be figuring out, what does this mean? Not this Easter Sunday as we celebrate and rejoice, but every day of our life after this, as we go step by step, where is this journey taking us? That Jesus has raised from the dead, that Jesus has sent his Spirit in us, that God who raised Jesus from the dead lives in us. That when we find ourselves in the moment of deep despair, as if we were the one who was arrested and nailed to the cross, we can have hope because we know that God is in us and that Sunday is coming. And when we rejoice and we're happy, we can bear in mind that there are other people that are in despair, that are in tragic circumstances, and we can understand and we can minister to them because we've been there too, because Jesus has been there too. And we know that God has given us life, real powerful life. And this image of the Israelites going through the Red Sea, not because they were wise and full of faith, because they weren't. They were complaining. We should have stayed slaves. We had food when we were slaves. They weren't trying to kill us when we were slaves. We should have stayed in Egypt. God has long been calling us out of Egypt. He has long been calling us out of slavery. And this moment where we celebrate that Jesus is raised from the dead, he has taken us out of the slavery of death. He has rescued us from the slavery of sin. Those Egyptians lying dead on the shore, that's the part of you that isn't you. There are things we're going to leave behind as we go forward. As God draws us nearer to him, as he draws us through the wilderness and into the promised land, he is going to do away with the Egyptians in our heart. He's going to change us into that which we were meant to be. And that's going to leave some things behind. And getting there may hurt. That may lead us into our own Gethsemane, where we find ourselves going, yeah, but I really like that, whatever it is. I don't know how I will live without that. I don't know how I can forgive. I don't know how I can move on. And you have to surrender. Not my will, Lord, but your will. That God in you might draw you into a place you can't imagine, so that you can pass through the, I don't know what this means, into, thank God, God has brought me here. God has called us out of Egypt, and he's wiped out the power of the enemy. Their army is gone. You are free. You are free. In the beginning, Moses said to them, as they were complaining, do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the Lord's salvation, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only be still. Amen. Please stand. And we'll continue with the renewal of our